Aaron Crook, one-time National Beach Volleyball champion and recent finisher of the Marathon Des Sables 2019 race.
Very nice pronunciation. I like it.
Thank you. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm very excited to talk to you, and I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Now, on a scale from 1 to 10, how sore are you today?
No word of a lie. I feel better today than I did before I left for the race. Something strange has occurred. My body is just feeling terrific. I don't know why.
Wow, that was a surprising answer.
Yeah, for me as well. I actually, the day that I got back, I work with a trainer, Ian McCoy, and he also gives me massages from time to time. And he sent me a message the day I got back, and he's like, I'm leaving, I'm going overseas tomorrow, but if you want a massage today, I'm available. And I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I'm actually not even really that sore, but I should definitely get a massage. So I went in there, and he's like, what is going on with your body? Like, there's nothing wrong right now. It's perfectly fine. I'm like, I don't know. Something's happened.
That's mad. It's probably a little bit of a indication of your athleticism, I would say. So let's maybe start with, before we get into the 250K race through the Sahara, for those who are not familiar with the MDS race, let's talk a bit about your athletic background. I believe you're originally from Perth, and you started playing beach volleyball pretty early.
Yeah. Well, I started in the indoor system over there. So I played a couple of years of the national juniors. And then as I got a bit older and I didn't get as tall as some of my friends, I realized that there was probably limitations for indoor volleyball So I essentially decided that beach volleyball was the way to go, and I was good at all of the skills, or relatively good at all the skills, so it made sense. So I started then playing national junior beach, the National Junior Beach Championships, and lucky enough to play with a good friend of mine, Marty Swan, and we won a couple of those. And then me and my best friend AJ decided that we wanted to play volleyball more frequently and at a higher level. And in order to do that, we decided that Manly was the place to be. So we, after about maybe a 2-minute discussion, we had decided, and within a couple of weeks, we were over living in Manly. And I think that AJ's girlfriend at the time was maybe wondering why that all happened so quickly, but it did, and we were very happy we did. And I haven't looked back since.
You're still in Manly.
Oh, there's no place on the planet like it. So quality of life here is second to none. And anytime I have any kind of issues with this area, I think about all of the benefits, and it's a no-brainer. I would hate to leave.
It's an amazing place. So you mentioned that the height is kind of important for indoor volleyball especially, and it's also relevant for beach volleyball. But what other physical skills do you think is important on the sand for beach volleyball, and why did you excel at that?
Yeah, well, I think with indoor volleyball, you can be a specialist at one skill. So if you're a big, tall guy that can reach really high and spike the ball straight down, then, you can carve out a career as a professional middle blocker or, hitter, outside hitter. But with beach volleyball, if you're not able to pass a serve receive, then there's really there's no way forward for you. So it's really important to have a really good foundation in all of the skills. That being said, being tall is still an advantage, but I've been able to kind of get away with having a good sized jump. That being said, running is kind of killing that away, I feel. So,
Especially the long distance running.
Yeah, the long distance running. I've always considered myself as a bit of a little guy meathead, in that I'm no good at shooting, but I could always spike the ball because I could jump quite high. I was lucky enough that got me through. That allowed me to play at a high level, or relatively high level, for many years. I only really stopped playing at that level maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. Yeah. So
So for those who are not that familiar with indoor volleyball and beach volleyball, which is obviously outside, indoor is 6 players, outside is 2 players. And really, in a rally out on the beach, you're going to have to touch the ball at least once. I mean, it's very rare that you're not going to hit the ball, right, at every single rally. Whereas indoor, you kind of get away with one skill and you can still be a very valuable player indoor, right? Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you can hide in indoor volleyball. You don't need to serve receive at all. There's specialist passers, there's a specialist setter, and then, as I said, people, there's different hitters as well. But in beach volleyball, you will touch the ball every single rally. And that means there's nowhere to hide. You do have to be great at all of the different skills if you're going to want to win games at a high level.
Yeah. And you said you've kind of let go of that highest level of beach volleyball a year and a half ago. But before that, can I ask, what did your training look like besides just playing beach volleyball? What did you do to become a better player?
It's kind of changed throughout the years. I was lucky enough to be part of the WA Institute of Sport when I was back in Western Australia, and we had a really good program there for a couple of years, a full-time coach and gym access to a really good gym. So I think we would have trained maybe 3-4 times a week, early in the morning and late at night. And then we all still worked as well, but we got some good, sort of semi full-time training. And then when we got here in Manly, I mean, the reason we came to Manly was because there was better players and more of them. So, we had some legends here like Julian Prosser and Victor Anfloff, Tristan Boyd, like all these guys that had been on the national tour and had done what we wanted to be doing. And they were good enough to allow us to train with them. So we probably were training similar amounts of time, and I guess we were working part-time as well, so we had more time to do that. And then as the years went on, work commitments changed, and volleyball was still a big focal point of my life, but relationships and that kind of thing came into it as well. So I probably trained less, but still had that structured training from time to time. I think that not being a full-time athlete, you can still get away with sort of getting better at smaller parts of your sort of skill base without training that same amount of hours. But there's a big difference between being a full-time athlete and being an amateur athlete. And, I've never been a full-time athlete, so I couldn't compare it to that. But, I love playing beach volleyball. I still love playing beach volleyball. So any opportunity to touch a ball was one that I was definitely wanting to take.
Yeah. So you're saying mostly playing on the beach as much as you can with high-level players, but then also some gym stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the gym stuff, we were lucky enough to have a CrossFit trainer that had a beach volleyball group. That was probably,
that was a short
what was that?
stint,
Was that how long ago? How long was that? That was maybe 6 months or something?
Yeah, something like that.
It was so good. I mean, we probably,
it was fun.
What did we have? We had maybe 10 people consistently. And how many, we would have been training 3-4 times a week.
3 times a week is what the session.
It was so good. I think that for me, the gym is all about that kind of training. The least effective I've ever been in the gym is when I've just gotten a gym membership and tried to
just go
do
it
all
yourself.
myself. Yeah, and especially as I get older, it's becoming clearer and clearer that it's just it's pretty useless. You need to have some sort of a trainer and someone there to instruct you. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into your running. When did you start? Well, let's just, I guess, start with the beginning, because back when I knew you, you didn't really do much running as far as I know.
Yeah.
When did you decide to buy a pair of sneakers and start running further than 5Ks?
Well, I decided to do MDS before I started running. So work had gotten to a point where it wasn't possible for me to train for volleyball at all, really. And I realized that I'd hit my apex of how good I was going to be. And I was now coming down the other side. And for me, that took a lot of the joy out of it. I didn't want to feel like I was just playing for the sake of playing. I wasn't getting any better, and I decided that I needed a new challenge. I needed something else to really test myself on. So I knew that I wanted it to be really hard, and I knew that I wanted it to be very different to anything I'd ever done before. So I did what everyone does, and I jumped on Google, and I basically just like put in a bunch of entries like hardest challenges a human can do on the planet, insane challenges, and there was a bunch of lists. Google's great, there was a bunch of lists for this. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not the first, but MDS was the only one that I could see that I wouldn't need to like qualify for by doing a bunch of other really big events, because I knew that I didn't have the time or the resources to be able to do that. Okay, so that seemed to be their moniker is like toughest foot race on the planet. I thought that sounded pretty cool. My wife was immediately skeptical, as you can imagine. She thought that I was being an idiot. So I said to her, all right, well, tomorrow morning I will go for a run. And if I can run, a significant distance, like, can we maybe have a chat about this? And she was like, you're still an idiot, but do whatever you're going to do. So the next morning I woke up at like 4 a.m. and put on my shoes. They weren't even runners. They're just like sand shoes kind of thing. And I just left the house and started running towards Palm Beach. And
you didn't know where you're going?
No, well, I knew that, Palm Beach was a long way away. So I just thought I'd just keep going. And I ended up running for like 3.5 hours, super slow. And, but I ended up doing like 20 something Ks.
Yeah.
And then I just came home and I was like, yeah, look, I ran 20 something Ks. Like, that's almost the length of a stage, MDS. Like, sure, it's on the roads or whatever, but, I can do this. So she's still like, no, you're crazy. That's ridiculous. But then it was kind of cemented in my mind that this was something that I'm going to do. No, sorry, Liz. It wasn't cemented in my mind. So then the next thing was that a couple of weeks later, there was the Ultra Trail Australia. So I again jumped on Google and just went like long running races that are happening soon.
Oh, so you decided you wanted to do a trial run?
Well, yeah. Well, this is all like to prove to Liz that I'm capable of doing this without dying. Yeah. So I thought, well, I better run like a race that's kind of long because see if I can do that. So, Ultra Trail is like the gold standard in New South Wales. Now I understand that this is the case. It's the gold standard for like long trail runs. They have a 22K, a 50K, and a 100K in the Blue Mountains. Yeah. I had never been to the Blue Mountains, so this was going to be a great opportunity for me to see them.
So you didn't know about that?
Oh, well, I knew that, I knew that it was probably going to be difficult.
It's called Blue Mountains.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can work it out. It's going to be a lot of up and down.
But I also thought that you'd be able to, registering for an MBVA tournament, you'd be able to jump on the website and just put your name down and then you'd get to start. That's not the case either. I figured out that I had to buy an entry off someone that decided to pull out. So I was lucky enough to find one.
Because you have to qualify for the Ultra
you don't have, the Blue Mountains. You don't have to qualify for it, but the entries sell out within like an hour or something ridiculous of them opening because it's really like such an iconic race. Yeah. And it's one of the most popular races. And I also really underestimated how popular running is. I thought that it was like a kind of like beach volleyball. Yeah. But it's quite ridiculous. It's very well loved out there, and there's a lot of groups. But anyway, I found myself in the Blue Mountains. I had to go the night before. And
which distance did you sign up for?
This is the 50. Okay. So I did the 50. So I thought, well, I did 22 Ks, whatever, to Avalon or just beyond. So I may as well try this 50 in the Blue Mountains. I did go to a dietitian because because I never used to eat or drink water when I was playing volleyball, and Liz was worried I might die at this event as well. So I promised that I'd go to a dietitian, and I went in there, and she's like, okay, well, have you seen the race, the course for the race? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's in the Blue Mountains. I think I've got to go to this place to start. And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, you need to be able to figure out, like, you know, what the plan is for the race. I'm like, plan? Or you just like run from the start and then get to the end? Like, isn't that what a running race is? Do it as fast as you can. And she's like, oh, she's losing her mind with me at this point. Anyway, lucky I did go, because then I figured, like, I discovered that you needed to eat like gels and stuff that I had never discovered. And then I thought, geez, I would have been a lot better at beach volleyball if I had known about
eating.
Yeah, there would have been any cramps or anything. I would have had energy. I wouldn't have felt like falling asleep by the finals. So anyway, yeah, that was an experience as well. But I got to the Blue Mountains. I had to go up by myself and stay in this horrible hotel because it was the last room available in the Blue Mountains. And then just rocked up and ended up doing it in just under 8 hours, which for me, I really didn't have a time that I thought was going to be good or bad. But, you know, I was pretty happy with that. I thought I put in a really good effort. And, you know, I finished kind of like in the top third of my like starting group.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I was like, Liz, you know, I've just done the 50, so can I sign up for MDS now? And she's like, no, you're still crazy. There's no way you're doing that. But I was at that point, I was pretty sure that I was going to sign up for it. And then,
can I just ask, during these, you've done a 20K and a 50K in without really any training. Are you falling in love with running here? Are you enjoying it?
I am not falling in love with running. I think I'm starting to fall in love with that state that you get, that your mind gets into when you're utterly exhausted, and I'm starting to understand why people love it. And I have to say that the Blue Mountains, like what I'll always remember about that UTA 50 was just how stunningly beautiful the place is. And I think that I would never have seen that before. You know, I probably would have gone to the Blue Mountains and maybe done like a small walk for an hour or something with family, but I would never have seen it the way that I saw it on that day. And yeah, it was difficult, but I don't even remember how difficult it was, because I just remember, you know, what a great experience it was. So I wouldn't say, like, I wasn't loving it like I love playing beach volleyball, but I appreciate being out in the wilderness, and I'd certainly appreciate the effort that it takes to get yourself to that point, because there's something really beautiful about that, I think.
Yeah. So the Blue Mountains run was, when was that?
So that was, it's actually happening in, I think, next weekend. So it was about a year ago. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it was right on a year ago. Yeah. And then that was kind of like the start. When I did that Blue Mountains race, then for me, MDS was the goal. And, and
did you go back and sign up?
Well, so MDS is also very expensive, and we have to remember that my wife was pregnant with our second child at this time, and it felt like it was quite a ridiculous thing to be spending lots and lots of money on. Luckily, though, my beach volleyball experiences allowed me to gather quite a lot of information on beach volleyball teams around the world. And there's a website that allows you to bet on beach volleyball, and I became quite good at doing this. And what eventually pushed this over the line for me was that I was able to make enough money betting on beach volleyball to pay for my entry and my flights and all that kind of stuff over to MDS. So I was able to prove that, yes, this was like a crazy physical endeavor, but it wasn't going to hurt us financially too much. And she was still, you know, still really didn't like the idea of it, but it kind of helped a little bit, I think. So once I did my first sort of withdrawal from the betting account and then just put it all on the entry fees, then, you know, that was it. MDS was happening. Yeah.
So that's step one, basically, is getting the ticket for MDS, and then you got to organize all the rest of the logistics.
Yeah, it's a very far away where we start in the center of the Sahara.
Do you start in? Is it in Morocco or?
It's in Morocco. Yeah. So you have to fly into Casablanca, and then you get a 12-hour bus to Ouarzazate, which is a small town that actually do the filming of like Game of Thrones and that kind of thing there. Little trivia, and then a 6-hour bus ride into the center of the Sahara. So, like 10 massive big buses, you know, with nearly 1,000 competitors and crew and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, let me ask before we move on from there,
Sure.
because I'm a little bit worried. If this was happening right now, I would be a little bit worried about your preparation because of these other races that you've just jumped into.
Yeah.
This is a different beast, right? You got to have the right equipment, the right food, all that stuff. How did you prepare for that back in Australia before you left?
Well, when I signed up for MDS, I knew that it was hard, but I knew not much else. So again, this is probably why my wife was nervous. I had no idea that it was actually a fully self-sufficient race, so you'd have to carry all of your own food and everything like that. I only figured that out maybe a couple of months before I was set to go.
And how many days are you planning for at this point?
You got to plan for 6 days.
6 days of running.
6 days with an extra morning. That's one thing. There's many things about MDS that are unreasonable. The heat is one. We averaged like 36 degrees and got to 41 degrees on the long day. So that's tough. There's sandstorms, there's deep sand, there's sand dunes, there's terrible blisters. These are all things that could be enough to have you not finish the race. So I knew that I needed to run Ks leading into it, but I also wanted to do it without inconveniencing my family as much as possible. So I tried to run as many Ks as possible. I tried to get people involved, but no one was too interested in doing this with me in even the training. But I was lucky to get a couple of people along the way. But look, I did it without a structured running coach or anything like that. But I figured that if I just tried to over prepare, then hopefully I would have done enough to get through the race.
Yeah.
But there's so much unknown going into MDS. I just didn't want to die. That was the bottom line.
Goal number one.
Yeah. I really wanted to finish it, but I just didn't want to die.
Yeah. Let me ask you two specifics then. How did you pick your shoes?
All right. So I told you I went running that 20 Ks. Then for about a month leading into the UTA race, I was running in those same shoes and I started to get like sore feet. And then I jumped on Facebook and it became pretty evident that I needed to buy some running shoes. So I went to Pace Athletic in Manly, which I highly recommend. Those guys know everything. And they just pointed me in the direction of a pair of shoes.
Did you tell them that you were doing the MDS?
I did. No, I told lots of people and people just seemed very skeptical at all points. So I just stopped telling people.
Okay.
But yeah, I did initially tell them. The shoes that I got, first of all, were not the shoes I ended up running with because I got some big fat hockers that are on the road are great. But I did do like a coastal run later on in the piece and they were just horrible on sand. So I ended up buying sort of more grippy trail shoes that just proved to be wonderful in the end. They were awesome.
What brand were they?
Hoka again. Yeah.
Hoka, okay.
Yeah, the Torrents they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't speak highly enough of them.
So you did quite a few Ks in those shoes before you actually left?
Yeah. So, you have to buy, you have to set your shoes up for MDS by putting Velcro around them for gaiters because there's so much soft sand that if you don't have gaiters, you're likely to get sand in your shoes. You get sand in your shoes anyway, but a lot more sand in your shoes, which will contribute to terrible blisters. So it's hard to find shoe places that will put on these gaiters, so it was a bit of a process. So I probably had those shoes for maybe 3 months before I went overseas, and I don't know, probably put 100 Ks or so on them, maybe a bit more.
Yeah. And then with your food, how did you do a few runs where you try to eat during the run, or were you just like winging it?
Yeah. The food is hectic. It really is. You've got to buy all of the dehydrated food off websites, and I ended up having to get a bunch from the UK. And I know I'm terrible with food as is. So for me, I knew that it wasn't going to taste good, but I just needed to get it down me. So I figured that like porridge in the morning and then like macaroni and cheese at night was going to be the way to go without getting anything too fancy, because I just wanted to make sure that I was going to eat it. So I didn't actually, like, there's a school of thought out there to say that you should really train on the food that you're going to eat, and do it for a couple of days so that you know that it agrees with you, and that you're good to go. But in the end, I just ended up ordering a bunch and putting it in my bag.
Yep.
Hoping for the best. But
So
it worked out well.
you're planning for two meals, one morning, one evening, and then just snacks in between?
You've got to have a minimum of 2,000 calories a day to start the race. Wow, so they check your bags on the day before stage one, and if you don't have 2,000 calories a day, then you're not allowed to start. I ended up bringing about 21,000 calories over there with me, but I probably only ate maybe 15,000 of those calories. As the week went on, I figured my body started needing less and less. Like I only had 500 calories for the long stage.
Wow.
And
nothing.
then the next day I only had 2 gels for the marathon. And I felt much better that way. So it was just the way it worked out, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into when you arrive there.
Okay.
What's it like? You're traveling by yourself, correct?
Yeah. Well, there's a wholesaler called Traveling Fit that sort out, or they have the rights to all the big races around the world. So when you contact MDS to enter, they put you back in contact with the wholesaler from your region. So there was about 25 Australians, New Zealanders, and South Africans. So we're all one group that were over there. So, and we ended up all kind of being together. Well, most of us in Ouazzazate before we went to the desert. So there was this group of like-minded, crazy people that are all there's a lot of nervous energy because we had some seasoned ultra runners in our group that still didn't know what to expect or how they were going to go. So, no one knows. So everyone's kind of excited and nervous. But a very amazing bunch of people that have climbed Everest. It's an experience. So it's not just an ultra race. There's people there that are, explorers. Going out there to tick big things off their bucket list. And this is considered one of those events that you would do. An extraordinary event in your lifetime. So. It was, the conversations were great. It was very different, but it was really enjoyable. Great group of people. Yeah.
How many people are there at the start line?
Yeah, so it's a funny race, MDS, in that it has a relatively low DNF rate, and the reason for that is. This is the reason I was told. So initially, I think there was about 1,100 entries, and I think on the start line there was about 900 people. And the reason why there wasn't 1,100 is because if you're sore in any way leading up to MDS, you just don't make the trip. You suck it up. You lose your money for entering, but you don't find yourself in the middle of the Sahara with a injury, because at the end of the day, if you pull out or if you have to be pulled out of the race, they strip you of your food, they send you back to Ouazzazate, and you have to wait for everyone else. So it's a bit of a demoralizing situation. I don't think that people put themselves in that position if they're not in at least a good enough shape to finish the race.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, not like if you sign up to the Sydney Marathon and then you just pull out a 20Ks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get to go home, watch TV and have a beer. A little bit different. I actually, it's a major motivation because I just kept picturing myself sitting back in Ouazzazate in a hotel room, just like, oh, Aaron, you idiot. Why did you come here? So I'm happy that didn't happen.
Yeah. The energy must be nuts at the start line, just like nervous energy, whatever.
Well, the guy that invented the race is a French guy, Patrick Bauer, and he's renowned because essentially when he was a younger man, he set off into the Sahara and then just trekked for, I don't know what it was, 9 days or something, and then he decided that he was going to create this ultra marathon. So this is his week to be an absolute rock star every year. So he basically, before the start, he gets up on a car on the roof, and he's dancing and he's talking. Like there's a briefing every morning, and I think the briefing every morning is just so he can be the man. But they play Highway to Hell just before the start every day.
Oh man!
So everyone's just like losing their minds. I want a Highway to Hell, and they're just getting all pumped up and ready to go. So yeah, it's very different. I'm kind of like from the beach volleyball world, so I'm just looking around like, what are you crazy runners doing? What is this?
That's mad. That's a very good song to play before you head into that 41-degree heat. That's nuts.
That's right. Yeah, it's insane.
So what's it like starting that run and get going? And what are the
Because you have to be in the desert for 2 nights before you start, because it takes so long to get in there. You basically get in that night, then you sleep, and then they do all the processing to make sure you have your compulsory gear and all that kind of stuff. And you have to get before you go, you have to have a full medical and an ECG so that they know you're not going to just drop dead. So they have doctors there that like make sure your ECG is looking okay and all that kind of stuff. So it takes a long time. So by the time the start line happens, you're itching to get going, because you still don't know if this like ridiculous thing is going to be achievable or not. Plus, I would mention that the desert is freezing at night, and on the first night, we stay in these like little very basic tents, and it was the coldest I've ever been in my life. I put on every single piece of clothing that I had. I've got a good sleeping bag. I've got everything to ensure that I don't get cold. And I was in the fetal position all night, just shivering. So,
you get any sleep when you're like that? Like when it's
no, I think every night I probably woke up at like 2 a.m. and didn't really get back to sleep. They wake you up at 5 anyway. But just so cold. It got better, and we figured out how to make the tent a little bit more conducive to warmth, which was good. But it's very bloody cold over there at night. Yeah, it really is.
So how many Ks are you doing the first day?
So on the first day was 34 Ks, I believe. And the idea is day one, everyone will tell you, treat it as a warm-up, because notoriously what people do is, they've got all this energy and they just sprint out of the blocks and find themselves in a sand dune going, why am I here? 15 Ks in. So the idea is that you're supposed to take it pretty slow and steady. Yeah. And I definitely had that opinion on the first day, and that was my strategy. But I also found it a lot more manageable than I thought I was going to find it. So I went surprisingly fast for what I thought I was going to be capable of.
Yeah. What's the terrain like? Is it dunes, so up and down and soft sand?
It's quite varying. So there's a lot of hardish sand with jagged rocks, like that's the hard running surface, and then there's deep sand, like South Curl deep sand, and then there's like the biggest sand dunes you could ever imagine, like mountain sand dunes, and then there's mountains. There's a couple of like really big peaks that you have to climb, and that's like loose sand with loose rocks and that kind of thing. Yeah. So it really varies, but it's incredible. Like it's very different landscape to anything that I've seen before. But there was probably more deep sand than I was expecting. That sounds silly because it's a desert. Yeah. But the people that I had spoken to had kind of said to me, there's probably only about 20% of the race will be in really deep sand, and everything else is kind of hard or mountains. I would say it was probably closer to 60, 70% in deep sand, and the rest would have been hard. And
I guess they can shift as well, like with the wind and all that stuff.
Yeah. Also, you don't know what the course is going to be because it changes every year. So this year they had a new course director, and he apparently, maybe people are just going to say this, but he wanted to make a name for himself. So it was a little bit shorter, I think, than years gone by, but it had a lot more jam-packed into it in regards to like obstacles. So we had all of the highlights of the Sahara in the way of many kilometers of big sand dunes that they haven't had previously, and some big mountains as well that that were bottlenecks essentially, that were difficult. Like there was one big mountain on the last day, the marathon day, that was that you needed a rope to be able to get to the top.
Yeah, wow. I was gonna ask that, because it sounds like these mountains is pretty like much bigger than what I imagine the sand dunes are in the Sahara. And are you on all fours crawling up it basically? Or?
Well, for that one, you do have that rope to help you up. A lot of people do this race with the sticks. With the walking sticks, I don't know, running sticks, whatever you call them. So that helps them. For me, that's probably my strength, in that like I've always had strong legs and pushing.
Used to the sand.
Yeah, used to the sand. Yeah, that's my big advantage.
Yeah.
So I was able to just climb up them, but it depends on how physically able you are, I think, in regards to those. But
And are you running in a group with people, or
no?
Is it very much like a lonely experience?
It was for me.
Yeah.
Which was fine, but I've trained the whole year by myself anyway. Well, the majority anyway. So I was kind of expecting that. You could do it with someone, but everyone is going to run a different race.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want is to feel like you're not going as fast as you can, or going too fast, because you'll just burn out. So I think inherently people just run their own race. And that certainly was the case.
But you see people, I mean, 900 people starting. The
only time I was worried, so there's been people have gotten lost there's an episode on the Netflix series Losers about MDS, and the guy gets lost for 9 days and has to eat bats and stuff and nearly dies. Yeah. So people have gotten lost. People have died in this thing. And there was actually 2 groups that got lost whilst I was there.
This year.
And there was a couple of Aussies in there as well, but they luckily were pointed back on track by the locals. But it doesn't happen unless you're way up the front or way down the back.
Okay.
Because there's a big chunk in the middle, and you're going high enough at certain times that you can spot people that are in the race.
Yeah.
The one time I was worried about that was, so I ended up getting better each day, which was pushing me up the rankings. And then on the marathon stage, the last day, they have scattered starts, or so there's the top 150 runners leave 3 hours after everyone else. And I was ranked 130 at this point, so I got into this elite group for the second start. But I was looking around me, and there's the people that are winning the race, and there's like these guys that are and girls that are like ultra runners. That's their career, and or people that have done like all of the best ultra races in the world. I'm like, just having a moment. and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm the slowest here for sure. So what happens if I'm 150th and then they just bolt off, and then I'm left, there's no one behind me. I've got a terrible sense of direction. I'm going to be the guy that gets lost in the desert, and Liza's going to be justified and get real angry at me. So I was really nervous about that, but I also knew that 8Ks in, there was this big mountain that would be a bottleneck. So I realized that, if I just go as hard as I possibly can and get, make sure that I'm in front of some people by this bottleneck, then I was going to be okay. Because I figured that I would start passing people that had left 3 hours earlier after maybe 15, 20 Ks. So I just just belted. I just went as hard as I possibly could, and my head was on fire, but I got to this mountain and it actually worked out. It was probably my favorite part of the entire week, because on the other side of this mountain, there's this massive descent, and it's over rocks and boulders, and by far my favorite thing about trail running is going downhill and like the footwork needed, and
navigating through that,
like all of that stuff, and you have to be like totally switched on. There's no thinking about how sore your body is, because you trip and you're dead. No, not dead, but you break
you're thinking about every step.
So I got to the top, and I probably got to the top maybe in like 120th. So I kind of made up a couple of spots from my starting position. and I just started belting down this mountain. And it was wild. It was so much fun. Like I'm just jumping over boulders and just having the time of my life, with a smile on my face. I'm listening to like some hip hop and I'm like dancing as I'm jumping. And then all of a sudden at the bottom, I figure that I'm ahead of the chick that's winning the race. And I've passed like 3 guys in the top 10. So I go into checkpoint 1, probably sitting in the top like 15 runners. In checkpoint 1, like 13 Ks in.
Wow.
But then the next checkpoint is like 13 Ks away and it's pretty relative. Well, it's relatively flat. And I'm just a slow runner. So all these people just start passing me again. I'm like, oh, well, I had my good first 13 Ks.
Yeah.
But at least I wasn't worried about getting lost at that point.
That's mad.
Pretty safe.
That's so good. So you're listening to music while you're running?
Yeah. So I one of my luxuries was I invested in this super cheap, well, sorry, it wasn't cheap, but super light MP3 player. And I just put on a whole bunch of songs. And I'm really happy that I did because I think it really facilitates movement when you're at that point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't expecting it to be that I would run by myself the entire thing. I thought that there'd be times when I would be with other people. And it just never happened. So I was very grateful to have brought that MP3.
Yeah. Did you mix it up, like playing music and then not playing music?
The reason why I bought that MP3 player was because it was supposed to be the only one that you could transfer audiobooks from Audible onto it, and podcasts as well. So the audiobook files ended up not working, which was annoying. Oh, no. But I had a bunch of podcasts. Funnily enough, all the songs got transferred over. I only got 3 minutes of each song. It cut off at 3 minutes every single time, which I thought was going to be super annoying at the beginning, but it turned out to be not so bad because I could pace myself based on the music. So I'd be like, okay, Aaron, you're going to go hard for the next 8 songs and then you'll have 2 songs of easy running. And then, so I had an exact idea of the amount of time. So it kind of worked out well. But now when I listen to those songs, it's like the song finishes for me at 3 minutes. And I'm like, oh, what's going on?
There's more. What was a couple of songs that stood out? What do you remember from
whenever I travel overseas, I always get real folksy. Like I think about, like, I love all my Australian folk singers. So I got into the Waifs a lot.
Yeah.
But then I also, my pump up song was All Right by Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
That was my go song, and then there was a couple of like old school bangers that got me going as well. Yeah. Songs are a funny thing when you go running because they can also be incredibly annoying. Like if you're at like a really tired point and this terrible song comes on, you're like, come on, give me something to work with here.
Makes you in a worse mood.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it was a lifesaver in the end. It was good.
Yeah. So day 1, 30 or so K, and then you go, it's a similar distance roughly every day, or you must have had some longer ones.
Yeah, so day 1, I thought I was faring pretty well. I was, I think, maybe just under the top 200, which for me was like mind-blowingly good because I was expecting to be, up in that 600, 700, like that. I would have been happy around that area. Don't get me wrong, because finishing was always the goal. So I was pretty happy with that. And, we get these messages every night that they deliver on a piece of paper from people that have sent them through to the MDS website. So I already had anticipated Liza's message, and she was like, "You're going too fast, slow down." So I knew that was coming, but then she was like, "But you're doing awesome, and I love you." So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So my plan then was, all right, well, I went fast-ish on day 1. So day 2 was always going to be a killer because for the first time in like 13 years or something, they had included a 13-kilometer section of dunes in the race, which is the longest section of dunes they've ever had. Well, sorry, in 13 years that they've had in MDS. So we knew that checkpoint 1 was kind of, I think, 12 Ks. And then straight after that, it was into the dunes for 13 Ks.
And why is dunes the super challenging part?
Well, I think about workouts that I've had in the past, and, you might get taken to the beach and it might be run up to the top of that dune and do that 3 times. And that's the workout.
Like a Palm Beach or whatever.
Yeah. This is like the biggest dunes you've ever seen. And it's constantly up and down them, up and down them. And the sand is really deep. I didn't have any poles. And just, the amount of work you have to do in terms of your legs to get up the top of a sand dune is significant. So coming down, is a bit of a break, but also there's load on your legs there as well. So it's hard for them to recover on dunes, more so than on mountains, because you've got the hard kind of on the way down. I feel like that you kind of recover quicker on those. So I ended up going quite well on the part, the first checkpoint 1, and then got onto the dunes and powered through the dunes. Like I was feeling good, but my legs were feeling really crampy, and I felt at any point these full body cramps were going to happen, and I was worried because if this happens in 2-3 Ks in, I'm rooted because you can walk a cramp off, but you're not going to be able to climb out of dunes. So, just churning through salt tablets, and ended up getting to the end of the dunes, and then there was an 8K run or something small to finish that stage off. And I ended up going super slow on that 8K. So the overall stage 2 for me was my worst stage in regards to pace. But it was also one of the most memorable parts of the experience because those 13 Ks of sand dunes are unlike anything I've ever seen before and probably will ever see again. And they're pretty breathtaking. So it was a difficult stage, but
you see any wildlife there at all?
No, it's really barren. Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of lizards, and a guy did see one snake, but there's just not much around.
One guy out of 900, so one snake.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I only know that because I was eavesdropping and I heard him say, "I've got a picture of it on my phone." So I was like, "Oh, well, someone saw a snake." But they make you bring a snake bite kit as your compulsory gear. So I thought that I might have seen more, but there's a couple of scorpions as well apparently, but I didn't see any.
Okay. Yeah. I guess because it's out in the middle of the day, it's just so hot they all disappear, eh?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, it's also, I don't know. David Attenborough probably has a show where there's a whole abundance of wildlife, but I didn't
pretty sure there's a desert episode.
That's right. I didn't see a great deal though.
So it sounds at this stage, day 2, you're keeping track of where you're sitting in the rankings and you're kind of racing a little bit.
Yeah, well, I was surprised after day 1, but inherently I'm pretty competitive anyway. So, finishing was always the number one goal. But when I figured that it was quite manageable on day 1, then I started thinking about, well, it'd be pretty cool to finish this well. But really the number one thing that I wanted out of it was that I put in my best possible effort. I wanted to be absolutely destroyed at the end of every stage. Yeah. So that was, my big motivation. And then if that meant that, I was climbing up in regards to the rankings, then that was just a bonus.
Yeah. And are you getting any issues at this point, like blisters or?
Nice. Yeah. So in my tent, there's another 7 people, and blisters and sickness and dehydration are really the reasons why you wouldn't finish MDS, and blisters probably more so than anything else. And I, on day 1, had a couple of small blisters on my left toes, but nothing too bad. Whereas a couple of people from our group had come in and they already had sizable blisters on their heels, and you've got to go straight to the doctors, and they basically just cut them out. So from day 1, you're dealing with bleeding feet and blisters that are super painful. So mentally, physically, I'm feeling good, and there's really nothing I can complain about.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey.
Yeah, but that was kind of the theme. I mean, during the whole week, I didn't get any bad blisters or injuries. Like, yeah, like you get sore muscles and, you know, your legs are tired and sore and all the rest. But, yeah, I feel really lucky about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people prepare really well for it. I don't feel like I did a lot of preparation other than, you know, I've spent a lot of time in sand previously, so maybe that helped me. And also I like to walk around in bare feet a bit. So maybe my feet are just already beaten up. So, you know, they were hard enough to not get blisters, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you get to change socks and stuff like that, or like
well,
is it just one pair the whole week?
Well, you have to remember that the weight is the key in this. So day one, first stage, I'm starting that stage with like 12 kilos of weight in my pack with my water and my food and all my clothes and stuff. So everything that goes in your pack, you need to be totally sold on. So there's no luxuries here. There's no, I'll take spare this, I'll take spare that, that'd be nice to wear or whatever. It's literally like you're going to use the hell out of it or it's going to go. And
it's mostly food.
Mostly food, yeah. About 5, 6 kilos of food. And then the compulsory gear. But then you have, you know, one outfit that you wear. Generally people will take like a thermals for the night time, and that'll be their second outfit. So you'll get out, or like compression. There was a lot of penis outlines during the week, I have to say. I was never quite sold on running fashion. I'm still not sold on
no courtesy shorts?
No courtesy out in the Sahara. So lots of those horrible compression pants.
So guys just running in the compressions. They must have a top though, yeah? Like a shirt?
Oh, yeah. You got a shirt. Yeah. But mate, there's no niceties out there. Like, you need to be good with like seeing people urinate in front of you, defecate in front of you. Like this is basic. It's like a different world. There was like on stage 2, I was running behind a Spanish woman. We were going for ages. I probably was behind her for maybe, I don't know, 10 Ks or something. And then out of nowhere, she just pulls her pants down and starts urinating like right in front of me, and I had to like jump out of the way to avoid the urine. And it was like, I looked at her like horrified, and she was like, whatever, like it's the race, MDS, like just keep going for God's sake. And that was the tone of everyone. Like people just don't care. Like when you're so exhausted and sore, you just don't care about people seeing you do those things.
And there's not really any other people out there, right?
No. No one else. Well, there's the organisers and the doctors and all that kind of thing. They probably think they're all dirty animals, but mate, you just do what you got to do to get through it, and it's kind of liberating as well. Like I'm more than happy to come back and have a shower and a toilet, but you know, out there, it's okay for 1 week.
Yeah, you don't have to worry too much about other stuff, eh?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's mad.
Yeah.
All right, so we're roughly halfway through the race. You're, and it sounds like you're going great. What are the challenges that you have to deal with at this point?
So the third stage is about 38 Ks, I think it was. And it's a bit of a nothing stage because MDS is all about the long stage. Everyone will tell you, like, getting through the first couple of days is just the precursor to the pain that you're about to experience on the long stage, which is like the double marathon.
So you have one stage on one day that's called the long stage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 37 Ks or 38 Ks, whatever it was, seems like a significant distance, but everyone is running it knowing that tomorrow is the long stage. And you've just got to get through this and try and get through it as unscathed as possible because you're about to go to work the following day.
Yeah.
But that being said, it was a good one for me. And so I did the day before, which was the Long Dunes Day. I think that was 32, just over 32 maybe. And I did that in 5.5 hours. And then I did the following day, which was 38 in just over 5 hours. So I was going quicker and feeling better. So I got through that one relatively, or actually feeling pretty good. But I was really happy that it was finished because, as I said, like mentally, physically, you know that it's going to be a world of pain the following day, and any extra rest that you can get leading into it is just worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. So day 4 basically is the long stage.
Yeah.
And then you have two stages on the day, and both of them are really long.
So our long stage was 78 Ks, and they have a cutoff of like 32 hours, I think it is. So it basically goes into the next day. So for those that finish well, you have a rest day, but there's a lot of people that end up finishing in the middle or towards the end of that day. I think the last people came in about 2 p.m. or something that following day. So it's and they fill it with like a lot of the highlights from MDS. So there's lots of soft sand, just a really long way to be running in soft sand, and also you leave at 8 o'clock, I think it was, in the morning. So there's a long time in the sun. So you're basically dreaming of the sun going down a little bit so that you can get some coolness. Just trying to work your way through the day. I knew that come that later part of the day, I'd get a second wind. So I wasn't too concerned with pushing myself, beyond my limits before the sun went down a little bit. And I think, my strategy of just always moving forward and never stopping really worked well for me in that long stage. And I ended up finishing 105th fastest on that stage, which was my best finish, which I'm really happy about because, as I said, like you lose your mind in that long stage.
How long did that take? How many hours?
It took me 11 hours and 44 minutes.
So you're running through the evening and into the night as well?
Yeah. So the other people in my tent got back, I think the next quickest was about 17 hours. And then people were coming in 23 hours, I think it was. Yeah. So it's a different beast. It really is. And probably one of my favorite stories from that long race was towards the end, the last checkpoint. There's about 8 kilometers to go till the end, but it's dark. Everyone's got their headlamps on. I run into the checkpoint. I had the same routine every time, in that I would just get my allocation of water, drink as much as I wanted, fill up my 2 bottles, and then pour the rest on my head and then get going. So I didn't stop at all. Yeah. But I ran in there, and there was this English guy that was like drinking, and he was kind of swaying, and he was moving around, and he put both of his hands on my shoulders and said, "Please run with me. I'm losing my mind." And I said, "Mate, that's fine. No worries. We've got like 8 Ks. Just follow me. I'll take you home. We'll be sweet. It's all good." And then a couple of steps in, he just starts pissing all over himself. It's just, I'm looking at his shorts, and there's a stream coming beyond his shorts. And he looks at me with like terror in his eyes. He's like, "I'm pissing myself." I'm like, "I know, I can see." And then literally like running that last 8 Ks, there's people there, and I have to remember, like, these are still the faster people because I finished relatively well. So, these are the good runners. People are just talking to themselves. They're, some of the stories coming back, hallucinations all over the place. People just being turned around and not knowing where the hell or what the hell they're doing. Like, it's funny. Like, I feel really lucky that I kept my mind 100% of the time. Like, there was no...
You didn't hallucinate at all?
There was no, no point at all where I was like, "Oh, God, I'm losing it here. Something's going to happen." I was just so sure that, I was with it. I knew what I needed to do to finish the race, each of the stages. But, it was also quite... It was unlike anything I've seen before to see fellow competitors at a point where normally if you were doing that in everyday life, like, you'd be admitted to hospital or whatever, but it's MDS. So people are just like, "Just keep running, mate. Don't worry about it. Like, just keep going."
That's insane.
Yeah, it was, but that's part of the reason why I wanted to do something like this, because, it's just, it's kind of a cool thing just to be out there and, in a world where people are just so motivated that they can push themselves to those limits.
Well, especially in our time, and I mean, really, everything we've experienced, we're so comfortable.
Yeah.
Everything is just super comfortable. But I think that's why people get drawn to challenges like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there. Like, we live in a life where we are so comfortable that we don't have anything legitimate to worry about, but we worry all the time. And I'm a terrible culprit of this, you know. Worry about things that just don't matter because we're so comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's liberating to get out and strip everything back. You will be taught lessons about yourself when you get to that point. And we don't ever get to that point in everyday life. So people have like inflated opinions of themselves. They, they are just obsessed with things. Like, I'm not ranting. Like, these are all things I'm guilty of. So I'm not,
No, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly. But out there, when you've been running for 10 hours and your body is beyond exhausted and your, shoulders are falling off from wearing a pack. And, for me, all I could think about is I could only picture my family's faces in my mind. Like, that's all I could see. And it was in such great detail. It was like I was looking at a photo, which is not, if I was to do that now, I wouldn't be able to see that kind of detail. And I didn't,
in your mind,
in my mind,
right?
Yeah. Like I see it now. It was like it was a light bulb moment for me. It was a realization that you just everything that doesn't matter falls away, and only the important stuff remains. And that's why I think people do this, because it's the only way. There's just no other. There's no drug that you can take. There's no, nothing will replicate that.
Too many distractions here, right? In the life that we live, there's so much stuff going on all the time. We get entertained on our phone every single second if we want to. But when you do something like you did, your mind just must travel somewhere else that you can't make your mind go that place when you live in Sydney.
Yeah, it's so true. It's just it's a very different place, and I don't think that you can achieve it any other way. I think it's the only way.
So on that, although we're kind of halfway through your race, what motivated you to get going with this besides just trying something crazy that you Googled?
In all honesty, I had a great time over there, and anytime I felt like I was under, like my body was really stressed or in a lot of pain, I would smile and think, oh my God, I'm just so lucky to be out here, because the opportunity, it meant that I had to focus on this thing for a year to get there. First of all, that's really hard to do because there's so many distractions, and running is not something that you can stop for 3 months and then get back and be able to do long distances. And do them well. So I've had to chip away at it all year. So I felt really lucky that I got into the start line in a position where I could finish the race. I felt really lucky that I had the support of my family. Liz, I said she was skeptical at the beginning, but she was obviously my greatest supporter leading into it. And, by the time I left, she was super excited as well. And I had my sister, who I've been working with on this whole experience, and she had my back the entire time and was really excited. So I felt like I was lucky to be in a situation where I was able to achieve a goal, something that I really wanted to do. But not only that, I was doing it and people were caring about it. People that I love were caring about something that I did. And I think that there's very few times in your life that people are significantly going to care about how you go or how you do it. So I just felt really lucky the whole time, and that feeling never changed. And there was never a point where I was like, oh, I could stop and feel okay about this, or I've done enough, or anything like that. It was just like, my God, Aaron, you're the luckiest guy alive to be able to have this opportunity. And, that was overwhelmingly the feeling that I had throughout the race.
It's such an amazing outlook on it, because even though you're going through extreme physical hardship, you look at it as if you're privileged to be there, right?
Yeah, well, I really was. I truly was. I mean, everyone made sacrifices in order for me to be able to do that. Like, you know, Lies and my family made financial sacrifices to a certain extent. You know, Bet365 made financial. No, but also, you know, time. I was away for nearly 3 weeks, and we have a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I was able to do that was pretty amazing, and there's a lot of people that wouldn't get that opportunity. And really, like just very, very grateful and lucky to have been able to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome that can carry you through such a crazy race. So you staying at the top, at least the top third of the leaderboard or the race leaderboard at this point, right? Did you have any goals kind of halfway through it, or where you wanted to end up, or were you just still trying to survive it?
Well, after the long race, with my 105th place finish, I was then in the top 150, and the top 150 is like, there's
that's
literally
elite.
Yeah. Well, there's like
elite, Aaron.
there's like I'm not a good runner. Like I've never been a good runner. There's always people that have been better than me in the races that I've obviously like I think about it in beach volleyball terms, and like when people just start playing beach volleyball and go through the volley school and maybe play a couple of AA tournaments, and they remain pretty average for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
That's me in running. I'm like very much down the bottom, but like I'm signing up for so it's like signing up for a national tour when you're down there.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I'm in a position where, I'm in loser 5th game and on national tour or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's a running race, and there's only 129 people that are doing better than me in this race of nearly 1,000 people. Like in a race that I just would have been happy to cross the finish line in last position. Like truly, that would have been a great result for me. So again, I felt really lucky that I was in that position, but I also started to see that it was manageable. Like my level was good enough. My body was just in good enough shape. It was getting better, and it was getting faster. And I knew that. So the next thing was just that I knew that starting group was starting later, and I thought that would be a wonderful achievement to have been in that last starting group for the last
remainder of the race,
the last stage of the race, the marathon, because regardless of where I finish, I always started in that elite group. Like it was a bit worrying that I was in that group because I didn't want to get lost.
Yeah, you didn't want to be right at the end.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be super lonely. But it proved to be a fun thing as well, because it was almost like a hunting role, in that you started 3 hours later, so you could then like hunt down the rest of the pack and start picking people off, and that was enjoyable, I have to say. And the marathon stage for me was like close to, well, it is definitely the best effort I could possibly have put in. Like I went super hard, I didn't stop, and I just like pushed all the way to the end. And as I said, the beginning of that marathon stage with the mountain and the descent was just so much fun. So it was just it was a great experience to have been in that group and then finish the way that I did.
And did you not wake up sore at all, or like did you not wake up in the morning like, I can't believe I'm going to go and run X amount of Ks?
Honestly, the best way I can describe it is I feel like during that week, I borrowed someone's body that was much better and physically able than myself. Like it was really random. I was sore after the second stage in the dunes, and then I just started feeling better and better, and I started eating less and less food. And then by the end of the race, like after the marathon stage, like I was sore that night, but the next day, no muscle pain.
That's amazing.
Like I just felt better than I've felt.
Yeah.
Really ever with running. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe your body just kind of adapts a little bit to like back-to-backs, in that they if you do one big effort, then you'll have sore muscles and you'll DOMS for a while. But if you then run straight away, it kind of flushes it out, and then if you run again, it flushes it out again. I don't know, but yeah, it was. I've never had that before, so I don't know.
Did you see other runners struggle in the morning?
Oh, you have never seen anything like MDS camp. Like on the rest day after the long stage, I've seen hospitals that look much better shape than MDS. Like people are so sore. So even the people that are in great shape are hobbling like they need a walking frame. People are their feet, you know, the at this point blisters are so bad. People have like got full wrapping on all of their feet, and there's like pus and blood seeping out of them. People have cut out the front of their shoes. So, you know, people that are just trying to finish at this point rather than run have like cut out the front because their toes are so full of blood that they don't fit in their shoes anymore.
So they run in the sand with an open-toed shoe.
Yeah. So you have to just cut the front out of your toes, of your shoes.
Kind of doesn't sound like a good idea.
Well, it's that or not finish. So,
okay.
You know, there was a guy in our tent who, like a terrific guy, actually played beach volleyball at the Olympics in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a Kiwi guy named Reed Hamilton is an absolute legend. But he got terrible blisters from day one, and by the last night, so when we all got back to Ouarzazate, I had shared a room with him, and he couldn't sleep at all that night because he had infections in both feet, and his little pinkies were black, and my heart went out to him because it just looked so rotten. Like he had flaps of skin that probably needed stitches from having his blisters cut out. I always think about the Australian Open maybe 2 years ago. There was that guy that had to pull out of it was a semi-final or a final because he had blisters.
Oh yeah,
there was
the tennis.
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, but that's fine. Like blisters really hurt. Like blisters are painful." And then I'm like looking around at all of these people that have blisters on blisters and are about to run a marathon, and I'm like, "That's no longer an excuse. You cannot pull that out."
And they're running for no money. And
yeah,
if he makes it into the next bracket, he'll make $100 grand
in
more.
In fact, they're probably running like it's gonna cost them money because they have to get back home and pay the hospital to like not have their feet amputated.
Holy cow!
Yeah, but you know they have a full medical setup there. So there was a doctor who was part of our group as well, and he thought that their setup was better than a lot of the ICUs in hospitals in Australia. You know they have, I guess. In a race like MDS where you can conceivably die, you need to have everything on hand should the worst happen. And you know there was a lot of medical evacuations, and there was a lot of people on IVs, and it was like the walking wounded. But then, you know, the next day, just before the Highway to Hell comes on, and people have got their shoes on, and the fronts might be cut out of them, but they're ready to go, ready to jump back on, smiles on their face. Yeah.
It also must be a bit motivating for you to see everyone kind of struggle a bit, but you're feeling pretty good. That's always a good thing.
Yeah,
right?
I came away with a number of lessons about myself over the week, and one really big one is I've got a great body. Like my body can endure a lot. Like I'm not the smartest. I've got a terrible memory. You know, I'm not the biggest. I'm not the strongest, but it can endure. And I didn't know that before I left, but it gives me a lot of confidence because I know that my body and my mind can push itself to great lengths and stay sane. Yeah. You know, I didn't lose it in any of those times.
That's massive.
So, you know, I've always been okay, not terrific, not terrible, but you know, I think in the realms of being able to push myself, I would like to think that that's where my body excels. And
I think finishing MDS proves that.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. So that was a big thing that I kind of took out of it, and it's a thing that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah. Before I ask you how you ended up overall, do you have any stories that stands out? Anything you remember that you want to share?
Anything that I remember? Well, again, I kind of mentioned that there was a lot of urination and Defecation. As the week went on, things got sloppier and sloppier. So we were sleeping in, an 8-man tent that was basically just an A-frame, so we're all sleeping very close to each other. All the tents, it used to be that people would get up in the middle of the night and go walk off into the desert to take a piss or do whatever they needed to do. Towards the end, it really was that people would just like step out. Lucky actually if they're going to step out of the tent at all, but come around the side or basically a couple of steps and take a piss. And there was a bunch of times that I was woken up because I was really worried that the stream was going to come under the tent and get me. So I would always try and sleep close to the edge. But the downside of that was that you might get hit with a bunch of urine.
So you're not only battling the cold temperature at night, but you're worried about a stream of piss coming right next to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very basic.
That's incredible. How did you finish up overall, and what was it like to finish? To run across that finish line?
So I finished 124th overall. So I was very happy to have bettered my position on the marathon. I ended up doing that in 5 hours and 7 minutes, I think it was. So, I did like just under 43 kilometers in the same amount of time. I had done 37 kilometers 2 days prior. So that was a great, especially considering there was the mountain at the beginning. So first of all, couldn't have been happier with the finish. It was definitely the best effort I could have put forward. And, I feel like I had a dream run. Like I definitely do. I was just, best finish I could have hoped for, I think.
Yeah.
And sorry, what was the other part of that?
How did you feel finishing that?
How did I feel? So I had a plan that, I had a bunch of messages from Lies saying that there was a webcam at the finish line and that I needed to wave because Josie kept looking for me. But I only got those messages just before, like the night before the marathon stage. So I hadn't done it yet. So I had a plan that at the end of the marathon stage, I would like come in and like jump up and like wave to Josie and be like, yes, I'm done. This is awesome. But we came over this massive sand dune and then we could see the finish line, but it was probably still maybe 3 kilometers away. And it was all soft sand until the last like 70 meters or something. And I was like, as soon as I saw the finish line, I was like, well, Aaron, you're going to go hard until the finish line. Like it's there. So, but then like a K and a half in, I'm like, oh my God, my head's on fire. I'm feeling worse now than I've felt like the entire race. But I'm like, I said I was going to do this. So I'm going to do it. So I was like getting closer and there was a guy that was, I think he was, in the top 50 or he was someone that had just like done so well. And he was about 600 meters out. He was maybe 100 meters ahead of me. And I was like, oh, it'd be pretty cool if I could beat that guy. Like, that'd be a fun thing to do. So I kept running hard. And then about 250 meters out, I was like, oh, I'm going to need to sprint. So I just started sprinting and passed this guy and I'm like getting to the finish line. Oh my God, like I'm sprinting at the end of the marathon stage. And then I look over and he's started sprinting as well to beat me. I'm like, oh, far out, I've got to sprint even more. So I just went as hard as I possibly could. And then all of a sudden I was through the finish line, like past the webcam and I hadn't jumped or waved or anything. And I was like, typical Aaron, you've just gotten like competitive and then ruined all of the plans that you've been thinking about for 42 kilometers and like how you're going to put on this super awesome finish and you just sprinted and, gotten it over quickly. So
at least you looked fast, I'm sure.
Yeah, for anyone who saw me, it would have been, the fastest I ran during the race anyway. Yeah. But yeah, it was all over in a blink of the eye. But in hindsight, I'm happy that I finished that way because to finish a race as long as MDS in a sprint is also something that I think is a good thing, considering a lot of people pretty much crawled over the finish line on all fours.
I think the distance of the race changes every year. Do you know how far your MDS?
Yeah, so I think it worked out to be close to 240.
240.
I think
wow.
when all was said and done, it kind of goes between 240 and 250 depending on the course and what you have. But yeah, like a little bit shorter. But we had some of the MDS highlights this year.
Yeah.
So I think it was a pretty cool course at the end of the day.
Yeah. And what's the first thing that happens when you cross the finish line? What's the first thing you go to?
So you go and get your water allocation because with MDS you have a card that they tick off every time you come into an aid station, and there's a lot of penalties in MDS, so you only can have a certain amount of water for the week. And if you need more water, then you have to take a 2-hour time penalty. Or if you've got to go on a drip, then you have to take a 2-hour time penalty. Or if you have so they put your number on each of the bottles of water that they give you, and if they find rubbish out on the course that has your number on it, you get a 2-hour time penalty. So if for the long checkpoints, you have an option of 2 1.5 litres bottles of water, or you can just take one. And the majority of the time, I had the same routine in that I definitely didn't want to take an additional bottle out on the course because I didn't want to run with that bottle. So I would just, have the drink, fill my bottles up, pour the water on my head and get going. But that often meant that for those longer checkpoints, for the last 3Ks or so, I wouldn't have any water. So by the end of each stage, I was always like really thirsty. So it was like I would get through the finish line and then just like stumble to the official finish people that would like tick my thing off and give me the water, and then I would just like have a massive drink and then stumble to my tent. That was my routine pretty much every time. But yeah, it seemed to work.
So wait, when you finished the whole race, were you still under water allocations? Like you couldn't just get as much water as you wanted?
You should have seen on the last night, so you're still out in the desert.
Seems harsh.
You're still out in the desert, and the big treat of the whole week, well, there's 2 treats. First treat is on, I think, the end of stage 3. You get a can of Coke. Like that's your
sugar.
Warm Coke. Everyone lines up and it's just frothing at the mouth. Like, what a Coke. Give it to me. And then on the last stage, they have a big screen set up and they project images from the race onto it, and you get a beer. So you can imagine, and again, like one of the biggest things, probably the hardest thing about MDS for me was I didn't drink alcohol for a month leading into it, and then I didn't have coffee for like a week and a half. So, arguably that was harder than even the race. So for me, the idea of having a beer, I was like, this is going to be so great. I can't wait. But then like a massive sandstorm came through, blew the screen down. And then so everyone just like got their beer and then scuffled off to their tent and just kind of had their beer in their sleeping bag and went to sleep. But it was still pretty awesome. But
Did it taste amazing?
Yeah, tasted so good.
Was
not as good as my first coffee, but it was
okay.
It was pretty awesome.
Where did you have your first coffee after it?
I had my first coffee. First decent coffee was at the Sydney airport when I landed.
Did you just have one straight away?
Oh my God, I got off the plane and I was like, I better jump in a cab and go home. But then I went over and got like a double espresso and I was like, screw that. Let's jump on the train, go to the ferry to Manly. I was like, Liz, I'll meet you in Manly. Let's go do some sightseeing.
She was probably happy she didn't have to drive out to the airport.
Yeah. So I just had a terrific day, just amped up on caffeine. It's great.
Man.
But I haven't really stopped since, so I've just been drinking as much espresso.
So you've been on a caffeine high since you finished?
Yeah, just like beers and caffeine. That's been my last couple of days.
Why didn't you drink coffee beforehand?
I figured that I'm pretty reliant on my double espressos.
Okay.
And I figured that if I was at all craving that during the race, that might be something that, I'd struggle with. In hindsight, it probably didn't matter at all. But I also think that...
I would think there'd be much more stuff going on in the race than worrying about caffeine, yeah?
Yeah, but I think that, for the other sort of bigger races that I've done as well, I think it's a really good idea to put some restrictions on yourself because it kicks your mind into like getting prepared for it earlier.
Being more disciplined.
Yeah. So, every time you then crave a coffee or a beer, you remember why you're doing it, and that then refocuses you back in on what the mission is and all the rest. So probably neither of those things really mattered at all at the end of the day. I don't think that I was fitter or better prepared or anything like that, but mentally I think that it really helped.
Yeah, so yeah, that makes sense. Like maybe it didn't matter physically as much as you think, but mentally we don't know, right? It could have made a big impact.
Yeah. And the more, you know, your mind is in the game, the better you're going to be able to perform. I'm sure that that's the case. It has to be because mentally these things don't happen without a strong mental game. Like, you know, there's for every story about MDS, there's another one about a guy who's running a 3-hour marathon that comes to MDS and doesn't finish. Yeah. You know, it's not about how great you are physically. It's about like how well you endure. And that's really the difference between ultra running and just
one marathon.
Running marathons, I think.
Yeah, I've never ran any longer than a marathon, but it sounds like all these ultra marathons are more like a mental race than a running race. Whereas a marathon is a running race because you're trying to keep a certain pace. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, people think about when you tell someone you're doing an ultra marathon, they just basically stack up marathons. So, I'm doing a 100K run. They go, okay, well, that's like, you know, 2.5 marathons. You know, you're going to be really tired. But ultras are, you know, you don't run a whole ultra. You'll never run a whole ultra. Even the best guys will stop. People don't think about that and walk, but that's part of it in that, like, when you're walking up a mountain or, you know, some terrain that is impossible to run, you have to walk at pace. Yeah. You have to walk with purpose, because if you don't, you'll stop. And if you stop, you'll stop for good. Yeah. So, you know, the people that don't finish ultra marathons, they won't finish because, you know, they've pulled a hammy or they've done this or they've done that. They'll finish because their mind won't let them continue. And that's the beauty of it. It's a slog. It's a long slog where you cannot afford to lose your mind. It has to be in the game the whole time, because, you'll just stop.
Has this, maybe a loaded question, I don't know, but has this given you a taste for more running?
No. I think that I could see myself doing a couple of trail, maybe 20s, maybe marathon distances or something, as a way of, you know, just for enjoyment. I could see that, but I'm not. I don't love running. I don't love doing ultra marathons. That's not something that's a passion for me. So, you know, that might have been my last race. I'm probably maybe like 50-50 as to whether that's the case or not. But I would say that I have a taste for exploring now. And that's probably, you know, I don't know whether Liza will ever let me do anything again, but you know, I think that there's a lot of things in this wide world that require that are really hard to achieve. And all of those things seem bloody awesome to me. So
I think I should have asked the question differently, whether or not you were looking for another challenge, not another run.
I would say that I will definitely want to be challenged. It's about finding how I can do that, and how I can do that with my family's best interests at heart, without, you know, taking time away from them too much. But I would go back to saying that there is a lot of really exciting things in this world, and for the best part of my life, I didn't even consider any of them, and MDS has opened my eyes a little bit in that respect, because these experiences are things that that MDS experience I will always remember. You know, like I might remember games or like special tournaments in volleyball, but I've already forgotten a lot of it. But I will never forget MDS, that experience, because it was it was so different and it's so exceptional. Like it's such an unusual thing for a human to be doing in this day and age. And there are other things out there that are like that. And I think for me, I don't know what kind of sport that is, but I would like to think that at some point, you know, I'm going to be able to do more of those things. Sorry, lad.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to listen to this.
Oh, I'm sure she doesn't listen. We only have 42 listeners, so it's.
Oh, that's good. Phew.
Yeah. Nah, Aaron, that's amazing. It's such a incredible story and a great way to catch up with you again. I have to say, thank you so much for being on and sharing your story about MES.
Oh, mate, it's great fun, and I'm so impressed with your setup. I legitimately thought this was going to be an iPhone jobby. So, you're
Stepped
very
up
professional. I think that your prospects of more than 42 listeners are looking pretty good at this point.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to get you back on after you find your next challenge.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, mate.